Long ago in Rakshasthal, there lived an Asur king whose eyes shone like molten gold, Hiranyaksha. He was huge, built like a mountain. He carried a mace that looked like a falling planet, and he lived for one thing: glory of a worthy fight. Not a skirmish, not a raid, a death duel. He had received a boon from Brahma, a strange protection. No Dev could kill him, no Asur, no human, no animal. It made him bold. It made him reckless. It made him cruel. With that boon, he terrorized the three worlds. But there was one wound even his golden eyes could not hide. He had no child, no heir, no future. His kingdom was vast, his wealth was endless, his ego was loud. Yet at night, that silence returned. His wife reminded him of a bitter truth. Your elder brother, Hiranyakashipu, has 5 sons, and you have none. One day your nephews will take everything you built. That thought stung more than any weapon. So Hiranyaksha did something no one expected. He walked away from his throne. He entered a freezing forest and he performed tapas for years. He fought his hunger. He fought the noise inside his own mind. Until at last he returned, not with a treasure, not with a victory, with a child, a terrifying child, blind, ugly, a child whose very presence felt like a warning. Hiranyaksha named him Andhak. Andhak grew like a flame. Even without sight, he learned the shape of strength. He trained until his body became a weapon. He fought until his name became fear. No Daitya could defeat him. No rival could stand for long. But inside him, something remained raw. The taunts, the whispers, the feeling of being not truly born into the throne. Hiranyaksha tried to drown those doubts with glory. He fought Varun, the god of waters, and defeated him easily. Then he laughed bitterly. Even the gods are weak, he said. Where is my worthy opponent? Varun, humiliated, gave him a dangerous answer. You can never defeat Vishnu. That single sentence became a spark in Hiranyaksha's pride. If Vishnu would not come, Hiranyaksha would force him. So the Asur did something cosmic. He tore the earth from its place like ripping a jewel from a crown. He dragged it down to Patal, the lower realms. The worlds shook, the oceans rose, the heavens panicked. And Vishnu answered, not as a king, not as a calm preserver, as a colossal boar, Varaha. A beast form with eyes that carried the law of Dharma. Varaha plunged into the depths. Varaha found the stolen earth. Varaha lifted it like a mother lifting a lost child. And then Varaha turned to Hiranyaksha. What followed was not a duel. It was judgment. Varaha gored him with tusks. He struck him down with divine power. He ended the golden-eyed Asur. And before returning Earth to its orbit, Varaha looked at the blind prince, Andhak. And Varaha did something unexpected. He crowned Andhak as Lord of the Daityas. A blind adoptee became king of the subterranean realms. Andhak reigned over Patal. But the wound inside him did not close. It only changed shape. Andhak ruled with discipline. He was capable. He was fierce. But his cousins taunted him like poison dripping into the ear. Blind, ugly, adopted, unfit. They changed the minds of the people. They turned the throne into a question mark. Andhak felt the kingdom slipping, so he left. He went into a lonely forest and he performed tapas not for days, not for years, for 10,000 years. One leg raised, arms lifted, chanting, unmoving. But Brahma did not appear. Andhak's patience turned into obsession. Then obsession turned into horror. He began to slice his own flesh and offer it into fire until only nerves and stubbornness remained. And then, finally, Brahma appeared. Enough, Brahma said. Ask your wish. Andhak's wishes were not small. He asked for sight. He asked for beauty. He asked for strength. And he asked for the most dangerous thing: invulnerability. Not just against gods and asurs, but even against Vishnu and Shiv. Brahma's face hardened. Some conditions of death must remain. So Andhak chose a fatal caveat, a single crack in his own armor. If ever I lust after a woman who should be revered like a mother, may I perish. Brahma granted the boon. Flesh returned, sight returned. Andhak rose, whole, radiant, unstoppable. He returned to Patal, and the leading Danavs, even Prahlad, bowed. The throne was his, and the world for a while believed the story was over. It was just beginning. Andhak began as a ruler, but slowly he became a hunger. He stormed Swargalok. He defeated gods. He collected beauty like treasure. Women from Patal, women from earth, women from Swarga. He drank divine liquor beside rivers. He laughed in the pleasure gardens. He lived in mansions crafted by Maya. 10,000 more years passed in perfumes and feasts. And with every pleasure, his pride grew heavier. He began to mock sages. He disrupted rituals. He insulted the Vedas. Then, after ages, Andhak came to earth. He saw Mount Mandar shining like gold. He decided to settle. He built a hilltop city, forcing people to relocate. One day, his 3 ministers returned from touring the mountains: Duryodhan, Vedhash, Hasti. Their faces were stunned. Andhak asked, "What did you see?" They replied, trembling with excitement, "In a mountain cavern, we saw a woman of unmatched beauty. No one like her exists in the 3 realms." They urged him, "Take her, king. She's the perfect treasure." And something in Andhak's heart ignited. Not love, possession. He became obsessed. He wanted her. Now the story turns, because the woman Andhak desired was not a mortal beauty. She was Parvati. Once, Shiv and Parvati came to Kashi from Kailash. Shiv made Kashi his seat and appointed Bhairav as protector. Later, on Mount Mandar, Shiv entered deep meditation, a state beyond thought. Parvati, playful, came behind him, and she closed his eyes with her hands. In that instant, cosmic darkness spread. The worlds dimmed. As Parvati's hands touched even the region of Shiva's third eye, her palms heated. A strange essence flowed, mixed with Shiva's creative force. And from that divine mixture, something was born. A terrible being. Blind, black, deformed. Parvati was horrified. Shiv said calmly, "You created him by closing my eyes." The child was not born in the normal way. Yet Parvati, compassionate, was entrusted to care for him. Ganas guarded him. Parvati raised him like her own son. One day, Shiv again meditated on Mandar, and he felt a pull, a mantra chant so intense, so steady, it tugged even at his trance. A devotee was calling him with unwavering will. Shiv appeared, and the devotee was none other than Hiranyaksha, the golden-eyed Asur. Hiranyaksha bowed, and his pride melted into desperation. "I need a son," he pleaded. "My lineage will end." Shiv said, "There may not be a son born from your own body, but I will grant you a son." Shiv offered him his own son, born by divine means. Shiv declared, "His prowess is unmatched. He is fit to inherit your kingdom." Hiranyaksha accepted the child with gratitude and returned to Patal. The child grew from a bullied blind boy into a mighty ruler. But the love that raised him did not become his wisdom. It became a forgotten memory buried under power, until Mandar brought him back to the cavern, to Parvati, to his own doom. Andhak sent his ministers to the cavern, not with gifts, with demand. "Give Parvati to our king." Shiv listened, calm. Then he replied in riddles, "I own nothing," he said. "I am an ascetic." And he spoke of Parvati not as a property, but as will itself. "She bears everything with patience," he said. "She is the goddess of her own choice. If your master has the guts, let him come and try." The ministers returned. They delivered the message. Andhak's lust turned into rage. He took up his sword and marched, not like a lover, like a conqueror. Andhak advanced like a drunken elephant, heavy with pride. But at the entrance, Virak stood, a guardian, a wall of devotion. Andhak attacked. Weapons flew, elements were hurled, stones, water, serpents, thunderbolt-like strikes. Virak endured. Andhak mocked him. Then Virak answered with force. A battle erupted. Andhak's sword cracked. His army fell. His pride was bruised. For the first time in ages, Andhak was stopped. He fled. Yet lust does not accept refusal. It returns with more fire. After the first assault, Shiv vowed to perform Mahapashupat penance in a terrible forest far away. Parvati remained in the Mandar cavern, guarded by Virak. Andhak saw the opening. He returned with a larger army. Daityas attacked the cavern with thunderbolt weapons. Others charged at Virak. The entrance was destroyed. Then Parvati rose, not as a frightened woman, as Shakti. From her, multiple divine warrior forms appeared. A tide of fierce feminine force crashed onto the Daityas. The Daityas staggered, so they summoned a terror, a demon named Gila. Gila countered the Shaktis and began to push them back. Parvati's forces began to lose ground, and then the air changed. Shiv returned, radiant like 1,000 suns. He had completed 1,000 years of penance, and he brought a weapon earned in that solitude, the Pashupati Astra. Shiv released it, and it was not a single arrow. It was an apocalypse of forms: elephants, lions, bulls, birds. A massive force surged like the end of time. Daityas fell. Gila fell. The field became a storm of destruction. Andhak ran to his guru, Shukracharya. "Save my army," he begged. Shukracharya used the Mrityu Sanjeevani Vidya. The dead Daityas rose again and again. The gods began to lose hope. How do you win a war when the fallen keep returning? Shiv watched. Then he commanded Nandi, "Bring Shukra to me." Nandi charged through enemy lines, roaring, unstoppable. He seized Shukracharya like a vulture seizing prey and carried him through chaos. Daityas struck, but Nandi did not fall. Nandi delivered Shukra to Shiv, and Shiv, angered, swallowed him like a fruit. Inside Shiva's body, Shukracharya saw something beyond imagination, the universe within him, worlds within worlds, the scope of Brahman. Shukracharya trembled, transformed by awe. He begged Shiv to release him. Shiv did. Shukracharya emerged and withdrew from the battle. He told Andhak, "You are on your own." Andhak's safety net was gone. Now the story became personal. Shiv and Andhak finally faced each other. The fight between Shiv and Andhak was not a duel. It was an earthquake with names. They struck, they clashed, they tore the sky with weapons and roars. At last, Shiv impaled Andhak with his trident. Andhak screamed. Blood spilled, and the ground drank it. Then the horror began. From that spilled blood, countless Andhaks rose. Clones, terrifying copies, each one roaring, each one ready to fight. The battlefield became a nightmare. Shiv struck them down, but more rose. The boon was working like a curse. The gods watched the army multiply, and fear returned. Shiv, Parvati and Vishnu gathered. They understood the key, the blood. If it did not touch the ground, Andhak could not multiply. Vishnu used yogic power and manifested a fierce female form, a terrifying goddess with many arms monstrous and vast. She covered the battlefield with her massive feet. She devoured the clone army. One by one, the copies vanished into her hunger. Then Shiv lifted the original Andhak high on his trident, raised him like a banner against the sky. The goddess drank his blood before it could touch the earth. Every drop. The sun scorched one side of Andhak's body. Wind tore at him. The world saw him displayed, helpless, exposed. And in that unbearable moment, for the first time, Andhak truly saw, not with eyes, with memory. Hanging on Shiva's trident, Andhak looked across the battlefield and he saw Parvati. She did not look at him like an enemy. She looked at him like a mother looks at a lost child. Parvati lifted her hand and gently touched his head. And that touch opened a door inside Andhak. A flood of childhood memories. A blind boy, a gentle pious lady, hands that fed him, a voice that calmed him, compassion that did not ask who he was. Parvati, the same woman he desired like treasure, had raised him like a son. The fatal caveat of Brahma's boon struck like lightning. If ever I lust after a woman who should be revered like a mother, he began to weep. Mother, he whispered. The battlefield went quiet, as if even war respected this turning. Andhak pleaded for forgiveness. His voice broke. I am wretched. I am helpless. I was blind again, not in the eyes, but in the soul. He asked for mercy. Parvati's compassion did not hesitate, because a mother's heart is a strange power. It does not defend the child's sins, it offers the child a path out of them. Shiv and Parvati forgave Andhak. And Shiv did something that feels impossible to human minds. He gave Andhak a place among the Ganas, not as punishment, as redemption. Andhak became silent. He meditated on Shiv and Parvati as parents for eternity. People will remember Andhak as a demon. They will remember his armies, his pride, his lust. But the deeper truth is more haunting. Andhak was not born evil. He was born blind, unwanted, and powerful. He was raised by compassion, then poisoned by insult. He received a boon before he received wisdom. He conquered worlds before he conquered himself. And when he finally saw Parvati, he did not see a prize. He saw a mother. That is the real climax. Not the trident, not the clones, not the goddess drinking blood. The climax is a touch that turns a monster back into a child. And this is the warning hidden inside the Puran. Power without humility becomes a curse. Desire without reverence becomes doom. And the greatest victory is not killing the enemy outside. It is killing the blindness inside. Somewhere beyond time, among Shiva's Ganas, Andhak still sits in silence. Not as a king, not as a conqueror, as a soul that finally learned what it means to bow.